Welcome to the Mob Museum. My name is Jeff Schumacher. I'm the Vice President of Exhibits and Programs here. I'll be your moderator for the program. Such an amazing crowd. Thank you all for coming out. We've packed this courtroom, and we do this periodically, and it's always a nice challenge to figure out how to seat everyone, and it looks like we've done a good job. Hopefully everybody's comfortable. We've dreamed of putting together a program like this at least since I arrived here more than 10 years ago. We're so pleased that our esteemed panelists agreed to come to the museum and share their memories and thoughts with us tonight. I'm sure most of you recognize what a big deal it is to gather this group in one place. Yes. So I'm going to start by introducing our Sons of the Pioneers panelists. As you can imagine, the biographies of these individuals run into multiple pages with their many accomplishments and honors. Really, the biggest part of my preparation for tonight's program was to prune the bios so that we'd still have time for a few questions. So I've done my best to focus on the highlights. To my immediate left is John Bailey. John Bailey is the son of entertainment and civil rights leader Bob Bailey. He's been an attorney for nearly 4 decades, focusing on commercial litigation, healthcare, and gaming law. In 2001, after 16 years with a renowned Nevada firm, Bailey struck out on his own and established Bailey Kennedy LLP. His clients include many of the region's largest healthcare providers, Nevada businesses, and travel and tourism leaders. He's served on the board of directors of 2 publicly traded corporations, Boyd Gaming Corporation and SHFL Entertainment, Inc. He was a member and chairman of the Nevada State Athletic Commission from 2001 to 2009. Please join me in welcoming John Bailey. Next to John is Michael Gaughan. He's the son of Las Vegas casino pioneer Jackie Gaughan. He was born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1943 and has been a Las Vegas resident since 1952. He graduated from Bishop Gorman High School in 1961 and Creighton University in 1965 with a degree in accounting and received his MBA in labor relations from the University of Southern California in 1967. In 1967, Gaughan became an owner and ultimately casino manager of the El Cortez. He opened the Royal Inn Casino in 1972. After selling the Royal Inn, he built the Barbary Coast on the Strip. Everybody remember the Barbary Coast? Oh, yeah. As you should. The Gold Coast, the Orleans, the Sun Coast, the South Coast Hotel, and the Casino Queen Riverboat in East St. Louis. In 2004, he merged his company, Coast Casinos, with Boyd Gaming and became the 3rd largest gaming company in the United States. In 2006, he separated from them. Today, he owns the South Point Hotel, formerly the South Coast. Gaughan has been licensed. This is the really interesting paragraph. Gaughan has been licensed for 20 different gambling operations in Nevada, 3 times in Louisiana, twice in Illinois, and 1 time each in New Jersey, Mississippi, and Indiana. He has continually held a gambling license in Nevada for more than 55 years. Please welcome Michael Gaughan. Next to Michael is Jack Binion. For more than 50 years, Jack, the son of Las Vegas casino pioneer Benny Binion, has been an innovative and successful leader in the casino industry. Binion developed the Horseshoe Casino on Fremont Street into a Las Vegas icon, renowned for its high limits and generous odds. The Horseshoe's reputation as a pure gambling joint grew. This is how his official bio reads, so you know. Pure gambling joint was cemented in 1970 when it hosted the first ever World Series of Poker. In 1994, Binion brought the Horseshoe style to the Midwest. He established the privately held Horseshoe Gaming Holding Corporation and opened the Horseshoe Casino, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Bossier City, Louisiana? Bossier City, Louisiana. The next year, the second Horseshoe opened in Tunica, Mississippi. He later sold the Horseshoe in Las Vegas to family members. In 1999, Horseshoe Gaming purchased the Empress Casinos in Joliet, Illinois, and Hammond, Indiana. And in 2001, he sold the Empress in Joliet and converted the Empress in Hammond to his third horseshoe property, which became his third market leader. We're almost there. The combined horseshoe properties employed nearly 7,800 staff members, generated annual revenues of $840 million. And in 2004, Binion sold Horseshoe Gaming and its properties to Harrah's Entertainment for $1.45 billion, one of the largest casino transactions ever. Please welcome Jack Binion. Our panelist on the far left is Bob Miller, son of Las Vegas casino executive Ross Miller. He's the longest-serving governor in Nevada history, serving from 1989 to 1999. He's held other public offices as well, including lieutenant governor and Clark County district attorney. A Las Vegas resident for more than 60 years, he received his bachelor's degree in political science from Santa Clara University and a Juris Doctorate from Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. He served as the chairman of the National Governors Association, and he was chair of the Western Governors Association. And during his tenure as district attorney, he served as the president of the National District Attorneys Association. He was one of 9 individuals selected by President Ronald Reagan to serve on a presidential task force on victims of crime in 1982. He was also appointed by President Bill Clinton to the National Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations. Today, he owns Robert J. Miller Consulting and has previously served on several public boards, including America West Airlines, Newmont Mining, Zenith Insurance, Wynn Resorts, and International Game Technology. Please welcome Governor Bob Miller. And keep in mind, I cut that way down. So let's start with you, John. I want to ask each of the panelists, what brought their family to town, and then a little bit of information about that, and then I'll ask a little bit about their memories of those early years. So, John, what brought your family to Las Vegas, and your father and your mother in particular?
My dad was a singer, and he sang with Count Basie, and my mother was a dancer. And in 1955, they came here to open the Moulin Rouge on Bonanza. And that's how they ended up coming here and just never left. And so that's what brought them here. The Moulin Rouge was only open for about 6 months, but my father loved Las Vegas at the time because it was a small town compared to what it is today. But he loved the mountains, and he just said, "This is my home," and that's how we ended up here. I say we ended up here. I wasn't born until 1960.
What are some of your earliest memories of Las Vegas? What was it like growing up here? What memories from school, summer jobs, whatever you remember from those early years?
You know, I grew up in Bonanza Village, not too far from where Jack lived. And we didn't have sidewalks. We had bridle paths. Many families had horses. It was a very slow pace compared to Las Vegas today. Everyone seemed to know each other. Wherever you went, you bumped into somebody that you knew. I ended up graduating from Western High School back in 1978. Some of my fondest memories were going up and down Fremont Street, way before the canopy, and stopping into Binion's and taking a picture in front of that $1 million. Remember those $1 million and 10,000?
Yeah.
Some of my fond memories were of those times.
And I want to ask you a little bit more about your father. He was, you mentioned he was a singer, he was a television personality, he's the owner of a popular nightclub, and a vocal advocate for civil rights. And here's a picture, of him with Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. What can you tell us about his activities in the community in that regard?
He went to college at Morehouse in Atlanta with Dr. Martin Luther King. My dad was born in Detroit and grew up in Cleveland, and the North and the South were very different back then. The South was very segregated. The North was not. So he had a huge eye-opening coming from the North where, he spent a lot of time in New York and places like that that were very cosmopolitan, and then going to the South that was very segregated. And it was through that experience that when he was in Las Vegas, when he came to Las Vegas and realized how segregated Las Vegas was, that he felt the need to do something about it, along with other people. And the things that I recall him telling me, because I was young at that time, was just how important it was to not measure things by black people versus white people. It was all about what's right versus what's wrong. And so he always implanted in me, and it really showed through what he did in civil rights during that period of time, that prejudice and racism is, when you think about it, it's learned behavior. Infants are not born prejudiced, they're not racist, but they learn that. They learn it from their environment, from their parents, from people they hang out with. And he always told me that because it's learned behavior, people can unlearn that behavior and do right things versus wrong things. And so that was significant to me during that period of time, and that was part of his life, was the civil rights movement and desegregating Southern Nevada, and Nevada as a whole.
Absolutely. Sure. Michael, I'd like to ask you, what brought your family to Las Vegas? Can you kind of tell the story of how you ended up here?
Well, if you see the picture of the El Cortez, that corner room in 1944, I stayed there. And that was my father had not yet seen me, and he was stationed both at the Las Vegas Air Base and Tonopah. And I spent 2 days in that room, I was told, and I spent 5 days in Tonopah. My grandfather was a gambler. He ran roadhouses in a place called Carter Lake, which was between Council Bluffs and Omaha, Nebraska. And Carter Lake was formed by when the Missouri River had reparted. And it was kind of a poor black area, and Omaha didn't want it, and Iowa didn't want it. So it became one of the major gaming centers in the country. I said, my grandfather got killed in '46. My dad came back from the war. He went back to Creighton to finish his education and was a bookmaker. In 1950, they passed the federal wagering tax stamp, which kind of spotlighted all the bookmakers. And my grandmother decided to move my dad to Las Vegas. And she came out, and two of my grandfather's partners were a fellow named Sam Zigman and Ed Berrick. Ed Berrick of the UNLV Berrick lecture series, by the way.
Yeah.
And she bought him 3% of the Flamingo. My parents moved out in November of 1951. There was one Catholic grade school downtown in St. Joseph's, and the Dominican nuns could not get another desk in the classroom. My Irish Catholic grandmother would not let me move to Las Vegas. I got here in June of '52.
Now, obviously, you came at a pretty exciting time in Las Vegas in the 1950s. What are some of your earliest memories of the town?
Small.
Yeah.
It was about 35,000 people maybe, and it was the Mormons ran the town, and the mob ran the gambling. It was
Very good. Very good.
the Mormon, and I'm not knocking the Mormon church. The Mormon church ran the school system. The town itself was very, very well run for about all through the '50s. As things changed and things got bigger, and it became a different story. But it was a nice time. You didn't have to lock your doors, most of us, like I grew up with some of Jack's siblings, so that it was a much smaller town. It was much nicer.
What kind of things were you doing as a kid, as a teenager?
And there was-
If you can
Right.
still, you know.
I was trying to stay out of trouble. At the age of 14, I worked all the summers until I was I've never stopped. So I was lucky enough to start I started at the Flamingo Pool as a pool boy, which was probably the best job I ever had. I did 1 year as a busboy in the Flamingo showroom, and then I spent 4 or 5 years in the kitchens on the summertime. And then I spent 1 year as an operating engineer on the graveyard at the Las Vegas Club. And the Las Vegas Club used to serve a 49-cent breakfast on graveyard, and the cook was a drunk. and about 2-3 times I would have to go in there because of my kitchen experience, and it's a terrible job. It was, and the 49er back then was 2 eggs any style, ham, bacon, or sausage, toast, coffee, and hash browns.
Wow, wow.
And you did not want to send the wrong order out. They had 6 burners.
Wow, wow. All right.
By the time I got to when I got to 21, I dealt at the El Cortez and the Flamingo Hotel.
One thing that, people, I think most people identified your father, Jackie, with downtown, but he really got to start at the Flamingo.
My dad got started at the Flamingo Hotel. Yes.
Yeah.
He was there up until he went through about 3 different ownerships, and he was there until Corian bought it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What's Jack? We'll get to the poker in a little bit, but I want to talk about what brought your family to Las Vegas. Can you kind of tell what was happening in Dallas and how?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my father was in the gambling business in Dallas. And in the election in 1946, a reformed administration came in, and they closed down all the gambling. And so that's when we came out here. And it was a great time, because there's a lot of gambling throughout the country, but the government, it all started shutting down other places. So here comes all these unique people in a unique society coming out to Las Vegas. And it would be kind of like if the government said, listen, you can't play, the NFL can't play, no baseball games, you must come to Vegas. So here comes all the baseball players and all the football players, and they were here in Vegas. So, and it was a unique society because there was no, everybody was an outlaw. And when I say an outlaw, every dealer and everything basically had been making their living their whole life illegally. So everybody was marching to a different drummer. And boy, was it great. Because it would be like, and each one of these places, when they started off, when I came here, there was the El Rancho, the Frontier, they had opened up, and the Flamingo had just opened. And all these places, they formed partnerships from all these different places. Like the Flamingo, there was guys from New York, there was guys from Omaha, there was guys from Phoenix, Minneapolis, different places. And so, and they were all guys that, like I say, had a unique lifestyle and a unique outlook on that. So I didn't think so at the time, but it was kind of like being on a movie set because everybody was that away. And it would be like, okay, the Cleveland bunch they got closed down, so they came out and they opened the Desert Inn.
Yeah.
Each one of these places, people were from all over Toledo, St. Louis, and everything. So it's just like all of them gathered here all at once.
Yeah.
And so it was just a great time.
You, a little earlier, you described it as like the whole town was on edge.
Yes, everybody that came here had lived their whole life on the edge. And so, and you'd think, well, they talked out the sides of their mouth like in the movies or something. No, they were all good guys. They just thought different. One thing about it, the gambling, being a gambler in those days it's not like it is now. It really wasn't looked upon as it was bad. So, but that's what made it good.
Jack, what are some of your earliest memories of Las Vegas as a kid? Like, what were you doing when you were a kid?
When I was a kid?
Yeah.
Well, one thing about it, I started off at Las Vegas High School. You know why I started off in Las Vegas High School? It was the only high school. So it was, the town was small. And therefore, in fact, I meet people, we had a meet and greet before. Hell, it was just like a reunion because all these people, everybody knew everybody. And if you really think about it, because a lot of you have been here a long time, what a unique situation we had that you knew so many people, and as the town got bigger, that infrastructure spread out with them. If you came here now, you couldn't meet all the people that you know.
Right.
It's just so different. And so Vegas was just, whether you were in the gambling business or whatever it was just a unique time. Plus, the business, the town was just growing, as you know. Listen, when I came here, the county was under 30,000. Now it's 2.5 million. Just think about how that growth. I've often said, including me, that Vegas has made a lot of ordinary guys geniuses. Because the growth just.
That's a very good line.
So that's what made it so great.
Absolutely. Governor, I want to ask you now, what brought your family to Las Vegas, and how did that work?
What's that?
No, I was talking to the governor.
Bob.
Do you want to answer it for me? We moved here in 1955. I was born in 1945 in Chicago, in a very urban area where the playgrounds were alleys. My dad owned a bar bookie joint in Chicago, and he had an opportunity to come to Las Vegas at that time in the early days of the Riviera Hotel. He never discussed business with me, so I have only speculation as to how and where the opportunity came from. But he had a good friendship and a guy named Paul Dorfman, who was associated with the Teamsters Union, and Jimmy Hoffa. And Las Vegas was in an era of transition from sawdust floors to respectable gaming establishments. Many of them couldn't rely on banks or establishments to finance them, and so they reached out for the Teamsters Union Central State Pension Fund, who in effect were the landlord at this time frame for many of the hotels in Las Vegas. My dad knew Dorfman, who had the association with there, so I assumed that at some point Paul Dorfman, on behalf of the Teamsters Union, offered them an opportunity to buy in. He only bought like 4 points. Points, by the way, not a percentage, because they came up with the unique idea that you could sell more than 100 if you went with points instead of percentages. So one day my mother told us that we were going to be moving to Las Vegas. I was 10 years old. I said, "Well, Las Vegas, where's that?" She said, out west. So I had a vision of cowboys and Indians and Rosada saloons, and we took a train ride here. And after 2.5 days, arrived at the Union Plaza railroad station, a little wooden building. Went down Fremont Street, where there was only a few properties, and went out to the outskirts of town, there on Maryland Parkway. My dad had bought a duplex, a 3-bedroom duplex, very modest, but it had 3 bedrooms. And in Chicago, they lived in an apartment with 1 bedroom. My sister and I slept on bunk beds in the dining room. So having my own room was like heaven. And that was the early days of why we were in Las Vegas. My dad stayed with Riviera for a long time, buying more shares and becoming more important within the infrastructure.
So thinking about you mentioned a little bit about coming out here and memories of Las Vegas. You have some stories to tell about when you were a teenager here that were really, really great. What can you tell us about that?
Well, my dad didn't want me to have anything to do with gaming. In fact, he used to prohibit a deck of cards or dice in the house. He wanted me to encourage me to go to law school, and that's the path I ended up taking. But I worked at Summers as a teenager as a lifeguard at the Riviera. And families would come, and some of them had some nice-looking daughters. So I wasn't just a skinny scarecrow, I was the lifeguard. And I would approach the girls and ask them if they'd like to go to a movie with me. There happened to be a drive-in movie theater across the street. One such young lady insisted after the movie that we go back to the Riviera Hotel, which I was paranoid about. I didn't want my dad to see me going in the hotel, much less with a customer's daughter. So we went there and we walked toward the lounge. And I thought, well, there's a big crowd. I'll be able to talk my way out of this. I said, look, it's so crowded. We won't be able to go here. Kept walking, and the maitre d' looked at me and said, oh, Bob, would you like to see the show? Because as was said by my friends here, it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody. I said, well, I can see you're busy. He said, no, we'll take care of you. Wait right here. He came back a second later carrying a small table, had 2 busboys carrying 2 chairs, moved them down in front of the stage, put them down, and had the waitress come over and said, what would you like, Bob? What would you like, young lady? Well, this had been enough for her. She looked at me and finally said, do they treat all the lifeguards this well? Now, when you go from Las Vegas in those days, the other realization I had is that I wasn't living a normal life for somebody in the Midwest or East Coast, et cetera. Their experiences were far different than mine. My first year at Santa Clara for college, my roommate was from Omaha, Nebraska. He didn't know Mr. Gaughan yet. So I convinced he and another of his classmates from high school to come to Las Vegas, and we were about 19 or 20 years old, and we would sneak in an afternoon burlesque show. So we did. We snuck in. We were having drinks. And the announcer said, and now the star of our show, the beautiful, the vivacious Francine. A beautiful brunette, about 5'9" came out, only clothed from the waist down. I looked up and said, oh my God, that was my date to the senior ball in high school. They, of course, thought that I was pulling their leg, and since they were from the Midwest, that I would think they were country bumpkin hicks and would believe anything. But a couple minutes later, the lights kind of shone through the audience, and Francine stopped in the middle of her dance and said, oh, hi, Bobby. So I had a certain degree of credibility at Santa Clara.
John, I want to come to you. This is just another amazing picture. We know who this is, Louis Armstrong, right? With your
Yes.
dad.
Yes.
So your father knew, and your mother knew, many people in the entertainment industry. Okay, what can you recall about? I mean, it's a little bit later when you came along, but what can you remember about that?
You know, I realized much later in life that I had an experience that most people don't have as a young person. Because they were in show business, I had an opportunity to see a lot of them, a lot of entertainers at dinner shows that they had on the Strip at the time. And a lot of the entertainers, the African American entertainers, would be at my house having dinner. I distinctly recall laughing with Sammy Davis Jr., who was over my house having dinner because my parents would cook for him. Ray Charles, Louis Armstrong, Count Basie. I just thought that was normal. I just thought that's what happened. And so it was really unique. And in my house, because my parents were so personable, it was a house that all entertainers came to, and it was very cosmopolitan. It was a lot of fun. A song would always break out, and somebody would start singing, and people would start dancing, and it was chaos, but it was a lot of fun. But that's what I recall of being, because they were in show business and entertainment, the kind of life that I grew up seeing.
That's amazing. I think if there's a theme to our conversation so far, it's about not necessarily living a normal lifestyle in Las Vegas. Right? It's a little different here. Michael, I wanted to have you talk a little bit about your dad and his operation of casinos in Las Vegas. What distinguished his casino operations from others?
Let me do one thing. Can you go back to that picture that you had of Bob with the 6 gentlemen?
Yes.
Can you know, those were 6 governors.
Yeah.
If anybody don't realize that, you got Bob. Bob's on top. You got Dick Bryant, Bob Bliss, Michael Callahan, Paul Laxall, and Grant Sawyer. I've never seen that picture before.
Bob provided that. That's really cool.
Great picture. Okay, you can go back. You go back to me. No, my dad. My dad was the ultimate gambler. He knew what people wanted. He was very he was very well liked by his employees. He probably had the first employee pension plan in Nevada at the El Cortez. I said at one time he had 6 different places downtown.
Yep.
When I went out on my own, the Barbie Coast wasn't bad, but he couldn't understand the Gold Coast in the middle of a neighborhood. But he liked doing what he did. I got to say 3-4 times a week he would go through all of his places. I say he knew all of his employees. He cared about his employees, and he liked what he was doing.
Yeah, and this is somewhat of what Jack was suggesting earlier, but now it's hard to know everybody coming in the door. There's just so many people. But in those days, he knew not only his staff, but the customers too.
Well, there wasn't that many what they call today, the high rollers. So I'm saying
Right.
Yeah, there was. So I'm saying you knew who all the major players were back then. It was a whole different world back then. The accountants were not making decisions.
Right.
There were no corporations, and there's something to be said for that today. If my dad came back to Earth and saw my one billboard that says always free parking. He would say, "What are you advertising that for?" So it's.
Good point. This picture is of the then Union Plaza under construction. This was a big project for him.
Yeah, but he was never that involved in the plaza. It was that was Frank Scott
Okay.
and Sam Boyd. He never operated the plaza. The Vegas Club, the El Cortez, the Club Bingo, Western Bingo.
Yeah.
He was directly involved in, but the plaza, even though, him, Frank, and Sam built the place,
Gotcha.
but he was never. I say he never. But he spent a lot of time up there. But he was never really. He was never really involved.
Check this guy out.
And there's me with hair.
I mean, this is the transition is, of course, you made your own mark on Las Vegas, and certainly the Barbary Coast is where this really came to play.
If you look in the corner, you'll see some scaffolding. This was the night before the Barbary Coast opened up.
Wow.
And,
What was your plan with the Barbary Coast?
to make money.
Of course. Okay.
No, I tell you, I was the hardest thing that you can do running a gambling joint, especially if you come from downtown, and then and especially the Royal Inn, was trying to get a place going in the morning.
Yeah.
And the El Cortez was I was on Graveyard for 7 years there, and then when I had the Royal Inn, we used to buy I used to pay the buses a double who'd ever get to me first in the morning to just get 40 people in the place, and the Royal Inn was a great place. It was on the Convention Center Drive, but it later became the Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah.
And it was a great learning experience. It never made a lot of money, but it was a great learning experience. But opening night of the Barbary Coast, we opened the doors up about 6, and I went home about 1:30. My longtime partner, about 55 years, Frank, stayed and worked about 3:30. I got back at 8:30 the next morning. And I walked in the Barbary Coast, and there was 50, 60, 70 players. So I woke Frank up and said, "Frank, there's people in the joint." and the Barbary Coast never looked back.
Yeah. Very good. Jack, I want to shift to talking about the World Series of Poker and the origins. How did you guys come up with this idea?
What we really did, there was they called it the Gamblers Convention of a guy that was in the gambling business in Austin, Texas, had opened a place in Reno. So we went up there, and it was just really a poker game, or poker games. And I got the idea, the next year we were going to open a card room, and I thought, well, this will be a good kickoff, and we'll have a tournament. Now, when I say a tournament, we didn't think about it as a tournament. Nobody had ever heard of a gambling tournament.
Right.
But that didn't come for about 2 or 3 years. But we had it, and I'm going to tell you what, the poker players were the last of that unique society I was talking about before.
Yeah.
They were still the guys that were traveling. Them and all the illegal bookmakers across the country were still in that era, and so that's how we started. And they came up with the idea of playing a freeze out. And what a freeze out was, everybody puts up usually it was head up. People would put up a set amount of money, and one would win it all. And they just did it on a bigger one. The first tournament was just an afterthought. There was only 6 people. And then after that, it kept getting bigger and bigger. And today, I can't believe how popular worldwide poker has become.
That's because of you guys.
Yeah, well, if I'd have had a little more sense, I would have. I didn't realize what I had in my hand. I let it go.
There's another picture. You remember this picture? You recognize this?
With Bobby?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, put back that poker tournament. You see that picture there?
Yeah.
You know how many people are still alive in that picture? Me. Everybody else in that picture is gone. That was 1970.
Phil Will's in the middle.
And then Bobby, came from Tulsa, but he was living in Oklahoma City, and he came out and he was, look, Bobby was really, really intelligent, really smart, and he was a good poker player, and he's probably about 25, 26 there.
Yeah. And he ended up becoming a very high-level casino executive
Well, okay.
later.
Steve was remodeling the Golden Nugget, and he says to me, he says, you know, who has the ability to kind of run? And I told him, I said, Eric Drake really had a lot of business sense in a way, but his personal life was always, because Eric was always kind of like Eric used to say, I'm the seventh best player and 7-card stud player in the world. Unfortunately, I play all the time with the best 6 before me. And so him and Bobby went over there, and Steve asked me, and I said, Bobby's got a lot of, he's just a smart guy and everything. Yeah. And that's how they got hooked up.
Very good, very good. So, Jack, I want to stay with you for a minute. Now, in the 50s, your dad went away to college, as they say, for a little while.
Okay, well, when he came out here,
yeah,
you know, he was out here a couple of years. In fact, we opened up, he opened up a place where it was called the Las Vegas Club, but it was across the street. And then I don't know what happened. He was in with Kel Hosel, and they sold it. And make a long story short, and he opened the Horseshoe. He bought a place called the El Dorado, which wasn't totally, it was barely successful.
Yeah.
And he put in the Horseshoe, and he opened it in 1951. But he got indicted in Dallas from income tax evasion from the old days and state gambling charges in the old days. And he fought extradition for a long time, but he ended up being convicted in 1953. And so he got 5 years in Leavenworth. And at that time, he sold the Horseshoe to a guy named Joe Brown. And in fact, it's Joe W. Brown. And Joe W. Brown had been a gambler in New Orleans, but he had hit oil. And probably at the time, if they had had a Forbes 400, Joe Brown might have been on it. That's how much money he had.
yeah,
And good guy. And that's another thing. Here comes all these guys. He brought all of his crew from New Orleans. And they were really characters. Everybody out here was a character, but they were really characters. So I worked with all of them. I worked with a different, and so Betty Binion was gone. And then Joe Brown got sick, and people have kind of forgotten. The Fremont group bought most of the Horseshoe.
yeah,
And they had it for until about 1963 or 64. And what happened, the FBI had been bugging them for a matter of time, and they had quite a bit of evidence against them. Fortunately for them, the FBI was bugging them illegally.
illegally, right?
So they came and they said, listen, we got to leave. And that's when we were able, the family was able to buy the horseshoe back.
Very good. There was a time, I think, when the FBI was surveilling your house out there on Bonanza, right? And the story goes, I'm not sure if you agree with this, but as the story goes, it's not like they were hiding in plain sight. You knew they were out there, right?
Well, yeah, they didn't really make much moves. I think what they were afraid of is that my dad was going to skip the country
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
So we didn't care. I mean, they're out there. That's.
Did your sisters make sandwiches and take them out to the car?
Brenda, I don't even remember doing that, but my sister Brenda said that we would get in a car and drive, and they would follow us. But I don't. Anyway.
Right.
And when my dad got extradited, and we went back to Texas, I went with him, and they followed us all the way back to Texas.
Oh my gosh.
And my dad says, I'll tell you a story. He says, this is silly, because when we came in, we ordered a TV up to the room, and it was one, the little big old console, and the guy that brought it introduced himself to my dad, says, I always admired you and everything, and my dad says, if I wanted to leave, I could have come with that guy a couple of hundred, and we'd have torn the guts out of that and I'd have rolled out the TV set. And it was true. So anyway, that was bad.
Just a quick note, in our research about this building, we came to see that when Benny was fighting extradition, those hearings were held in this courtroom.
Yeah.
He did not win that one, but it's all right.
Yeah, I could tell some good stories about that, but I won't.
Governor, I want to go to Governor Miller. So you talked about your father working at the Riviera, and then.
Oh, yeah.
But when you started running for political office, some of your political opponents tried to sort of damage your campaigns by making allegations or suggesting that your dad was involved with organized crime, and somehow this was affecting you. How did you deal with that?
First of all, everybody in the gaming industry was suspect, according to the feds at that point in time. And during the various elections, they made suggestions about my father and being in gaming. In fact, he died in 1975 before I ever held any public office at all. They didn't stop him, however, in my first race for district attorney. They attacked my mother, who we responded in that case by suggesting that how terrible it is you have to, attack a nice little lady. Beyond that, in subsequent races, I ran on my record. And if you know my history, I was a police officer in summer in Las Vegas and one summer in Los Angeles. I was a deputy district attorney for a couple of years. I was the first attorney for the Metropolitan Police Department for a couple of years. I was elected district attorney twice. I was the first person ever reelected district attorney. I was elected lieutenant governor. And perhaps the most difficult one was an attack at extensive funding by Chick Heck, who was a United States senator, and I was lieutenant governor, and he was running against him was Dick Bryan, who was the governor in his second term. The speculation was that if Dick Bryan were to win, he would leave the governor's office and I would become governor. So Chick Heck ran a whole series of ads attacking my family and criticizing, saying you can't be in the gaming business and be a governor and so on and so forth. So I became frustrated with it. It was Senator Bryan's race. I wasn't on the ballot, but I wasn't going to allow myself to be smeared like this. So I brought together people who had knowledge of my background. I brought the sheriff and the district attorney from Clark County. I brought the sheriff and district attorney from Washoe County. We held a press conference. We also had with us Stan Hunterton, who had been chief on the organized crime strike force for Las Vegas and was the chief counsel for the president's task force on organized crime. Stan said he had been through thousands of hearings from wiretaps and the documents, and there was no basis to attack me at all. But the best line came from John Moran, who was the sheriff at the time. And he said, "Bob Miller is no more associated with organized crime than is the Pope." That became the headline.
That's good. I'm just sharing some of these photos. I mean, obviously you were you're spending time with presidents, and you know you reached the pinnacle of elected office in Nevada, I think. And what was what are you most proud of from your years as governor?
Probably the years I was governor were 89 to 99, and there was phenomenal growth. I can't say I had direct responsibility for it, but I was willing to take credit. Many hotels on the Strip were built, Mirage, all the way down to 99 when the Bellagio was built, MGM and others. So it was a vibrant period of 10 years, and I had the good fortune of being the chief steward.
Yeah. Any
On
regrets?
the other hand, I had efforts to change our educational system, bringing in class size reduction, setting up standards assessments and accountability.
Yeah.
And I was involved on a different level at the national level, since I had been president of the national DAs. I had experience at the national level from that, and I was selected as chairman of the National Governors Association and worked with my colleagues on welfare reform and other issues. So those are the things I was proudest of.
Yeah.
What I would like to transition back to for a second, if it's
Yeah.
all right. As you know, I wrote a book called Son of a Gambling Man. And in it, I believe that I parallel the metamorphosis of Las Vegas with that of our family. From my father, who was in illegal gaming at one point in time, to myself, who became the longest serving governor in Nevada history. The genesis of it is that Las Vegas was changing. We were going through different eras of machination.
Yeah.
First, there was the sawdust saloons, but then it evolved to the Horseshoe and the Coast casinos and the like, owned by individuals, upgraded beyond what you would have expected before. And the general attitude in the community, with law enforcement and beyond, was it was a land of second chances. Just like Jack was saying, everybody came from colorful backgrounds. Well, that was forgiven you as long as you didn't do anything wrong here.
Yeah.
Another modernization occurred. Ironically, I can characterize it in a story. My father didn't want me in the gambling business, and he kept his business apart from the family. But he worked 7 days a week, so every Sunday night, my sister and I would join my mother and father at the Hickory Room in the Riviera for Sunday dinner, where he would tell us everything we did wrong all week. But it was always just the four of us, and it was our time with our father. I was back from college on one occasion, and there was a short, portly guy sitting at the family table. I was stunned. And he started talking to my dad about what a great gambling executive he was and so on. And he had this great idea that my father would be interested in. He wanted to build a casino around a circus. To have trapezes overhead and have peep shows and have slides and have an elephant wandering around. As we walked out after dinner, my father turned to me and asked me what I thought of that. Mind you, this is the only time in his entire life he asked me my opinion on something to do with gaming. I responded, I think that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Bob Miller, gaming visionary.
That's
And
fun.
then from there we went on to corporate America,
Right.
which is where
Right.
we are now.
Right. Michael, I'm going to come back to you. So today, All these, you can tell us about this photo in a second, but you're still running the South Point, one of the most successful, one of the most popular and successful casinos in Las Vegas. What have been the keys to your success, and what role did your father play in that?
Well, what my father always used to say is that hard luck always made him lucky. No, it's just a matter of I still operate. Well, when I was a kid, working in gambling, I worked around a lot of people that I thought were dinosaurs. Today they consider me a dinosaur. but I'm out of the old school. You gotta give people value for their money. You can't let there's only you can't charge for parking. No, yeah. You want to. I've been very lucky. I've always been able to hire very competent people, and a lot of people say I overpay. They don't say that, but a lot of other people say that. And my people are forced to make decisions. You get fired for not making a decision. I've been with people that that they want to micromanage. I don't. I very seldom. I want to do the marketing and the advertising. And I'll step in occasionally, but let if you're going to hire people, let them run the place. I probably the biggest compliment I get at the South Point is the attitude of my employees. I have great employees. The employees are happy. They're making money. They're not picked on. I'm there 5 days a week in football season. I work. I try to come in on Sunday a little bit. I'm still a bookmaker at heart. When they licensed me originally, I had the third sports book on the Strip. I remember them telling me I didn't have the experience, and they only allowed me to do parlay cards for 2 years. But it works together with your customers, your employees, the state's your partner. Give the people what they want. I'll promise them less and give them more.
There you go.
And
What about this picture?
this picture, I'm very close with the Budweiser people. They've had a tough way to go. That's a picture of a Clydesdale and the dog at the. That's one of the island bars at the casino. I got a picture of me and my general manager with the dog and the horse at a 21 table. When they bring the horse in, when they start to play the music over the intercom, the horse will prance.
Wow.
And it's better than and the kind of cut back on the Budweiser is now owned by a Belgian company, and they don't think much of the horses, unfortunately.
Oh.
But I'm saying I do a Christmas thing every year where you can come in and get your picture taken with a Clydesdale. Mm-hmm. We do about 9,000 people in about 10 hours.
Wow.
Just come by and they use their own phones, thank God, but I don't. But it's not. I don't. It's kind of almost like the $1 Million.
Yeah. Right.
No, it's not. No, we have a good time at the hotel, and I'm saying there's not a whole lot of pressure on the people. I have 11 restaurants there, 9 of which I run. We only lose about $1.5 million a month with them. But it's a matter of you promise them less and give them more. And that's in the
Yeah.
the corporations today. They don't follow that.
I have one more question
there's
for
my.
you. Now, can you explain how this statue ended up at the South Point? I remember it downtown very distinctly.
No, it was down. It was downtown on the back corner. Jack's sister had taken the place over, and she kind of and she sold it to Harris. Harris bought it, I think, just for the World Series of poker, how to capture it, and then they sold it to a second person. And I was talking to Becky one day. Becky, when I was in Gorman High School, my freshman year, Brenda was a senior, Ted was a sophomore, and Becky was in the 8th grade at St. Joe's, and I lived 2 blocks behind Jack on off of Bonanza, and it was close. And I went to Becky and I said, Becky, let me buy the horse, or let me buy the statue. And she said, no, just go down and get it. I still own it. I went down to get it, almost got shot. Becky didn't own it, and again, and they got pretty mad at me. And so later, the horseshoe got sold to a fellow named Terry Cottle, a very nice man. And the horse was back there in the corner with all kinds of bird shit on it, baked on it. And it wasn't very. And so I said, so when Jack went down, I said, Jack, I says, have you met Terry Cobble? Jack says, yeah, I met him. Seems like a nice guy. He says, see if he'll sell me the horse. So Jack goes back and says, he'll sell you the horse under 2 conditions. I pay him $1, and when I move the horse, I got to fix that area where the thing was. It was up on a pedestal. And so we went down there, took the horse off the pedestal, destroyed the pedestal, I recontracted the area, and Terry Cobble's office, here's a framed $1 bill. That says thank you on it. Took the horse out, and at the time, the last section where the Steak and Shake and the Asian restaurant and the poker, that last section was this kind of a dirt world. And we put the horse up in the alley. A lady, the sculptress was a lady named Deborah Copenhagen, and I called her, and I told them I'd captured the horse, and it was in terrible shape. And she says 2 things. She says, do not use steel wool, Irish cut oatmeal with Dove soap and warm water. It'll take a long time, but it'll clean it up, and don't till it because it's only on 3 hooves. And I had 2 porters back there for 3 days, 8 hours a day, just going over the horse.
Wow.
Now, to get it in, we had to cut a hole in the wall, take down the temporary wall, take down the restroom signs, the buffet signs, the oyster bar signs, the cashier signs, and it took about 8 hours to bring it in. And it sits next to the coffee shop, and you can't believe the amount of people want to get their pictures taken with the track.
I was everybody's homework after this. If you haven't gone to see the horse, you've got to go. I took this picture. I'm really pleased.
If you look at the nose is kind of shiny.
Yeah.
That's just from people in the last 6-7 years petting the nose.
Amazing.
They've taken the patina off the nose, and there's a lot of compliments. And Benny's, the statue weighs about 3,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And they said my architect said that wherever I put it, I got to put a column in the basement, and however where it sits, it was exactly over a column. Wow. So occasionally you get lucky. And it's just nice to have, and I think Benny's happy there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Benny never said no to me. Jack did, but Benny never did.
This is a question for both. I think it's going to be a combo answer between Jack and Michael. I think one of the most intriguing stories in Las Vegas lore is about a man named Fat Irish Green. And he was said to be associated with Bugsy Siegel and supposedly did a great favor for Siegel before Siegel passed on. I'll let you tell the story, but the gist of it is that he had free room and board at the El Cortez for life as a result of doing this favor. But then when Jackie bought the El Cortez, he was like, wait a minute, who is this guy who gets free room and board for life? And so Benny agreed to give him board. Is this an accurate story, and do you guys remember Fat Irish Green?
Well, I don't know. Mike can tell you better than me about Irish. I just remember he's this little fat guy that walks around, and he's supposed to be a tough guy, but hell, there's a lot of tough guys around here in the end.
You want the true story about Fat Irish Green?
Yes, please.
Right. He was never called Fat Irish Green.
Okay.
Somebody wrote a book, and he was Irish Green. I was with him for 7 years, and nobody ever called him Fat Irish Green. What happened to him? He was a money runner for Siegel, and he was a degenerate crapshooter, and he blew the money one day, and then they kind of forgave him, and about 6 months later he did it again, and they took him out to the desert and they tried to beat him to death with baseball bats. He did no favor for I don't know where they get these stories. And he lived, and Mr. Housels and people like Mr. Binion, they kind of supported him, and they put him into the he had a room at the El Cortez. When my dad bought the Vegas Club from Cal Housels, and also bought the El Cortez from Cal Housels, and we inherited this guy. And my dad wanted him out, and he said, wherever you want to go, any apartment, I'll pay the rent. I just want you out of the hotel.
Oh.
And the next day, Cal called, your dad called, and I was there for 7 years, and he was there every day. No, he was not right, but he caused no problems. He was just. But I don't know where they ever got the start. I don't know anybody who ever called him Fat Irish Green,
Okay.
and I don't know about it. I don't know who beat him to death, or tried to beat him to death, but I don't think Siegel did him any favors.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I'll straighten that story out for you.
I'd like to say this, that I met Jackie, you can't see the picture, but in my mid-20s, when I was about 23 years old, and he hadn't opened the Las Vegas Club then. He was still over on First Street booking, and our family has been intertwined all these years, and I cannot say enough about the Gaughan family, what a great family they are. Michael and Jackie are just the best.
Thanks, Jack. I always liked your dad better.
We've kind of answered this in different ways. You guys have answered this question over the course of the evening, but I want to ask it one more time in a different way. So here at the Mob Museum and in the community, I know I hear often, and Michael Green in the front row will tell you the same thing. People in town will say, "Oh, Las Vegas was better when the mob ran it." Now, I think they don't really necessarily mean that. I think what they mean is they liked Las Vegas when it was smaller. What do you guys think? Everybody can answer this one.
I don't think the mob ever really ran Las Vegas.
Wow.
I mean, they were a bunch of individual people from other places,
Yeah.
But if you notice that all these places, most of the people that ran them weren't Italian, they were Jewish.
Yeah.
Now, there might have been some hidden ownership I don't know about, but they were back east.
A couple Irishmen.
So when people say that, what do you think they mean? I think they mean that it was a smaller place, more personal service, wasn't so crowded, so forth.
I think some of the credit actually should be going to Ralph Lamb,
Okay.
because Ralph Lamb was a very strict law and order sheriff. Sometimes didn't always follow the rules as well as he should have, but he kept the town very, very clean as far as crime went.
Yeah. Michael, any more thoughts on that?
Oh, I was said before, the LDS people, there's 3 Mormon states, Nevada, Idaho, and Utah. And the town was. I played basketball both in the Catholic Youth Organization and the LDS. If you don't know it, every Mormon church has a basketball court in it. They're very kid oriented. And the town was just nobody ever got killed in Las Vegas.
Right.
They got killed in other places, but no. But there was never, there was nobody ever got killed in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Maybe Phoenix, maybe Los Angeles, Beverly Hills,
Yeah.
but not Las Vegas.
Ralph was a cowboy sheriff, and he rode on everybody. He was the author, in effect, of we're going to give you a second chance, but you better not screw up because then you're going to be in your face. For example, the Hells Angels decided to come to Las Vegas early in their careers. They parked in front of the hotels, and when the police department sent a couple cops over to talk to them about it, they just blew them off. So Ralph had one of his deputies go to him and say, "You all need someplace to sleep tonight. So over here in Mount Charleston, there's a grassy field that you can park your bikes and you can all stay there." So they accepted that and went up there. What he didn't tell them is that the entire field was surrounded by police. And as soon as they were all there, the police came in and arrested them all, seized all their bicycles, which were taken to the California border, locked them up overnight, shaved all their heads because they didn't want them to get lice. And they had the attorney come in from L.A., so they locked him up overnight too. And when Ralph was confronted by this attorney saying you can't do this, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you, you got so many clients here, I figured you need a lot of time to talk to them all." When I was the attorney for the police department, one of the things I had to tell Ralph is we had to be careful as the times were changing. We had to have reasons other than he's a no-good son of a bitch from the rest of
Right.
But the era that we've been talking about could only have occurred in the fashion that it did.
Yeah.
You had to have people with experience. You can't move from sawdust to nice places if you don't know what you're doing. And they were, especially the bookies, like my dad, had their word was their bond. And they had to make a decision. There was no computers or CPAs to tell you whether this person should get credit. Was your nose. So that's why they worked many hours, but they had on their nose, who can do this? And it's worked for the betterment of the community because we've evolved from there. One of the stories I like to tell about my dad and what I learned from him was he used to play a lot of golf with Jay Sarno, the that fellow that was at dinner talking about the circus. He was partners with him. They were playing golf one day, and my dad lost. And he peeled off a few $100 bills and gave them to Sarno. And Sarno said, "What is this? This is too much." My dad said, "Well, I pressed you on number 16. In other words, I doubled the bet." Sarno said, "Well, I didn't hear it." My dad said, "I don't give a damn if you heard it or not. I pressed you. I know I pressed you." He walked a little bit further, and Sarno said, "Well, what if I'd have lost?" I said, "You'd have paid." And that was the early era of gaming in Las Vegas.
Before I want to open it up to questions because in a minute I have one more question for you, Jack, which is your dad passed away in 1989.
Yes.
And that was, I think it was before the Mirage opened.
I can't
Or it
hear
was
you.
right around the time that the Mirage Hotel opened.
Right.
And that is really generally signals this new era in Las Vegas when these mega resorts were being built and so forth. What would your dad think of Las Vegas today?
Well, I think, no, he embraced that. Look, just like Bob pointed out, it's just a natural evolvement comes about.
Yeah.
When everybody, like he says, when everybody came out here, you had to kind of, who was going to run these places? People that had experience.
Yeah.
But it's, each era is unique to itself. But like I say, everybody in this room has really been the beneficiary of a trip to the moon.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. All right, very good. So for our questions, what I'd like you to do is raise your hand, and we have people with microphones in the back who will come around. We want to be sure to hear that everybody can hear your question. So we'll call on you, and then we'll bring the mic to you. Okay. So let's see. We have a question back here. Yep.
So I was born here in Las Vegas, and my dad was a boss at Circus.
Can't hear you.
I went to the
Speak
Meadows,
it up.
so I've known the Goodmans since the 80s, and I've known the Binions since the 80s. So I just want to ask, when you guys first moved to Vegas, where did you guys live?
You'd like to know when you first moved to Las Vegas, where did you live?
Where I lived? Lived out on Bonanza Road, almost a rancho.
Yeah.
In fact, the town was so small that Rancho was almost the western edge of the town. There's a little development. There was a public swimming pool. There was a municipal golf course. And Rancho Circle had just been built. So that's how small the town was. But we lived almost at Rancho and Bonanza.
Have you driven?
Because you could have horses out there.
Right. Have you by chance driven by the place lately?
No, I haven't been by. My sister Becky owns that house, and it caught on fire,
Yeah.
and it's unlivable.
Yeah, it's not
But
in great.
it's been there a long time.
It's not in
obviously.
great shape, unfortunately. What about you, Michael? Where did you?
I think we lived on a duplex right across from where the Stratosphere is today. That's where we started.
Okay. Bob, you think you might have mentioned Maryland Parkway. Is that where you started?
Yeah, it was a development of Party Phillips houses on Party Phillips Place, just near Sahara and Maryland Parkway. I remember a dog that lived across the street went across Sahara Boulevard and got bit by a rattlesnake.
And John, I think you mentioned you lived in Bonanza Village.
I lived in Bonanza Village, which was a few blocks north of
Yeah.
where Jack grew up,
Yeah.
in
And
that
it's still
same
there.
area. It's
That
still there.
area's
Yeah,
still there.
it is.
Yep. Yep.
North or east?
Yep.
East.
Northeast. Do we have a question? Kayla, do you have one? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just amazed. Usually I come here for book talk, and what I'm sad about is there's no book to sign after this.
Well, I can't hear it.
You four really, truly are four aces. And it's just incredible.
He's
I
complimenting
just
us.
wish there was a book to sign
complimenting us.
after this.
He's complimenting us.
He was,
That's real good.
I think the question would be, have you ever considered writing a book?
Am I remember what?
Do you want to write a book?
Yeah, listen, I'm all but deaf, so you really have to yell.
No. Do you want to write a book?
No.
Michael?
I'm one of the old school, though.
No book. Okay.
I wrote a book,
That's
as
right.
I mentioned earlier. It didn't make the bestseller list.
No, the governor has a really good book if you haven't seen it.
I have two questions. Could you tell me about gold dollar?
Oh, Go Dollar? In fact, I brought him some pictures
Yeah.
of Go Dollar.
Oh, I
let
want
her,
it.
Let her look at him. Go Dollar was raised in South Texas. And what people don't realize, that kind of on the southeast part of Texas, all the cowboys were black. And Go Dollar was raised on a real big ranch. In fact, it was a ranch that one of the first big oil things was called Spindletop. And the ranch that was on, Go Dollar raised. So Go Dollar was a cowboy, and my dad, had the ranch. He loved horses and everything, and that's how him and Go Dollar hooked up. And Go Dollar was with the family for many, many years, and he was extremely. He was big, but he was extremely strong. So me and Go Dollar we did a lot of traveling together, and my dad liked to travel anyway, and him and Go Dollar would drive everywhere. Okay, like I said, when we rode from Las Vegas back down to Dallas to turn Binion in, Go Dollar drove us down there. So that's I got a lot of good memories of Go Dollar.
He was a great barbecuer.
Huh?
He was a great barbecuer.
Yes, great cook.
Yeah.
He was a great cook, except for one thing. Out in we'd be out in a chuck wagon, and he'd cook breakfast, and he would fry those eggs, and they were the hardest goddamn things ever. But everything else was good.
You had another question.
Yes, for John. Could you tell me what you remember about gambling on the West Side?
I think my parents were either the first or second African Americans to have a gaming license because they opened a bar and packaged liquor store right off of Cary and Martin Luther King. It was called Sugar Hill. It was named after a section of Harlem in New York, and it was also named after, there was a show on Broadway called Sugar Hill. And so they had gaming in that establishment. And it was a typical bar and liquor store, but the bar area was such that I remember as a kid, it was on a big piece of property, and I remember as a kid, people like Johnny Carson and people like that coming over from the Strip, the Las Vegas Strip, to hang out at Sugar Hill because they had connections to a lot of people from New York, and that's where people hung out.
Thank you all for doing this. It's great. Mr. Bailey mentioned that Sammy Davis Jr. used to eat dinner at his house. Are any of the four of you able to share any Rat Pack stories for public consumption?
The Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra,
What's
Dean
that?
Martin, did you guys know them?
Who?
The Rat Pack.
No.
No?
I didn't.
They were the most popular show in town, the Rat Pack.
They were on the Strip. We were downtown.
Well, but I think we're underselling your interactions with entertainers, though. What can you remember, Michael, different entertainers that you met?
But what?
entertainers, performers that you knew?
Well, the main thing was that TV was just getting started, and the only place you could really see entertainers at was across the board was Las Vegas. The entertainers used to do 7 days a week, two shows a night, 8:15, a dinner show and a midnight cocktail show. But it was probably the only place in the country where you could see these people. Because other than the Ed Sullivan Show, these people did not have shows. You could not see them live. They weren't doing concerts. And we were lucky. I can tell you, ask me about an entertainment group. I probably saw them all.
Yeah.
I didn't have any personal relationships with entertainers, but I did have an experience with one when I was a lifeguard. Had a busy day as a lifeguard. You have to put in context of the era we were in. It was much more conservative. Like, for example, going to the shows, you'd wear a coat and tie, you wouldn't dress like you do now. And certainly, public displays of affection were minimal. So one day at the Riviera Pool, there was a young couple that were very amorous with each other. So the head lifeguard sent me over to explain to them that they needed to go somewhere else. So I did go over and say to both of them, please go inside. If you're going to continue this way, there's children here. So they reluctantly left. The next day, the same person who was the opening act in the showroom called down, and by happenstance, I answered the phone. And she said, I want to get a Chase Lounge. I said, yes, ma'am. Well, as soon as you like it, let me know when you're coming down. I'll put it wherever you like. She said, no, I don't think you understand. I want to put it on the patio of my room. It was a three-story building with little patios facing the pool. I said, well, the lounges are for the pool, ma'am. I'm sorry, but I'll put it wherever you want if you come down. She hung up on me. A couple minutes later, one of the owners called me. Said, who talked to Miss Streisand? I said, I did, sir. He said, well, I understand, but make an exception and take the Chase Lounge to her room. So I wheeled the Chase Lounge down into the hallway, up the elevator, out the elevator, down the hallway, through her room onto the patio. I received no tip or no thank you.
We've got a question over here.
Yeah, this question is for Jack. My dad, your dad, and Mo Dalitz used to hang around. And we came there one night, and Benny found out that who's downstairs, and he says, I'll be right down. Well, Benny always got dressed up with these $5 gold buttons, so it took him about 25 minutes to get downstairs. The question I have is, who's got the recipe for the chili?
Who's got the recipe for the chili?
Oh, no, I don't have that recipe. But let me say this. That's Gaughan. His father was a great guy. Your father was the best. Yale Cohen, he was out at the Stardust.
Hi, this is for Binion. Jack, it seems like every tournament that I've been in with you, you've won the poker tournament. Do you ever lose at poker, and have the four of you ever played poker together, or stories of gambling together over the years?
Do you play poker at all?
No, not anymore.
Have you ever?
I used to play a little poker. I just played good enough to be beat.
Growing up, did the locals, did you ever play together, the four of you on the table? Did the four of you ever gamble together or hang out?
One time we played an owner's game. One year we played an owner's game down at, during the tournament. We had a special game where a bunch of us did play.
Yes, yeah,
Whoa.
things like that, but
That was the one time
regular poker,
we never did it
I-
again. It was very embarrassing.
I wasn't a bad player, but I wasn't a great player.
Neither was I.
We have another question in the back, and we'll wrap it up after maybe one more after that.
This question is for Jack Binion. You're a Vegas guy. How did you end up in Louisiana, in Hammond, and at the Empress Casino?
How would you wind up in the other places?
How much?
How'd you wind up in the other places, in the other locations?
Okay, I just took a horseshoe formula in other places, and every place I went, we were the #1 in the market. And
Disgusting.
it just, in Louisiana, it was opening up, and it was just an opportunity that came along that I was able to take advantage of. It's just, hit or miss. Kind of like Mike.
I was there.
Was in East St. Louis.
I didn't get there. You got there.
We have a couple more, and then we'll be done.
Okay, I remember cruising Fremont Street. I'm old enough to have done that. So what do you think of Fremont Street now? With the Fremont Street experience and all of the dancers and the vendors out there hawking?
There were two people who opposed it. Jackie Gaughan and Benny Binion.
Yeah.
They did not want to do it.
Yeah.
Governor Miller, you had an opportunity to do absolutely nothing if you had chosen to do so. How did you end up doing things that are the absolute antithesis of what you unknowingly, obviously, grew up with? To end up in law enforcement when obviously everybody that was coming here was doing something else?
Thank you for asking the question just the way I wrote it for you. As I said, my father wanted me to be in a different living and following his footsteps. And the only direction I had was that I should go to law school, which was always the plan. When I went to law school, before I went to law school, I went to college, I graduated, and I was going to go to law school, but I couldn't because I was going to be drafted for the Vietnam War. I got into a reserve unit, and that blocked me out till the January going on active duty. I came back, and my father informed me I needed to find a job. So I talked to his friend, Ralph Lamb, who he was very good friends with, the sheriff, and they hired me for about 6 months working in the office there. So at the end of my first year of law school, I was going to stay in Los Angeles, and I didn't want to spend any more time in the library. I'd had enough of that during the school year. And Ralph Lamb talked to Sheriff Pete Pitches in LA and had me hired as a deputy sheriff to work in the courts. So I was uniformed, commissioned, and armed, to a danger to myself more than anybody else. Between second and third year law school, I did the same thing in Las Vegas. Again, I was deputized. When I graduated, I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do after law school. And I was playing basketball at the YMCA, and one of the others was a guy that I knew from the Riviera day when I was a lifeguard, which is seeming for tonight, that's the only thing I ever did was a lifeguard. But he told me he was a deputy district attorney and that I should talk to the guy on the next game over there because he's the assistant. I thought, oh, okay, I got to find a job. So I was hired as a district attorney. And it evolved from there. I was the attorney of record for a lot of cases for a couple of years. And then I was hired to be the police officer's legal advisor in the police department. And from there, I thought, I've been around the DA's office a long time. I think I could be the DA. So I went that way and ran. And I was able to win the election. That was the election where they attacked my mother. And then I got active in the National District Attorneys Association. and was in line to become the president of the association at the end of my first term as district attorney. And I was approached by the then Attorney General, Dick Bryan, who was running for governor, suggested I run for Attorney General. I said, I don't want to run for Attorney General, I'm going to run for re-election as DA. He said, well, you can't do that. Nobody's ever been re-elected district attorney. And it'll be the end of your career. You'll never be governor. I said, governor? Who the hell wants to be governor? I didn't think about being governor. So I'm going to run for re-election. So I did. Well, 4 years later, same Dick Bryan had become governor and was considering running against Chick Heck, as I mentioned earlier, to unseat him as a U.S. Senator. And so I became governor in that fashion, and then I won 2 elections as governors. So it evolved as much by happenstance as anything else, but it was clear direction of difference from my father's life and mine. Although I love my father and he had a tough road and he worked hard for us, it wasn't the same atmosphere for me. I would never be as good at it as these gentlemen are. Hopefully I was able to benefit from their wisdom from time to time.
Thank you, Governor. Okay. On a somewhat related note, I want to disclose this with a question for you, Jack. You're kind of the elder statesman on this up here. I can't think of the word. On the stage. How old are you?
What's that?
How old are you?
87.
And how many times did you go? How many times did you go skiing last year?
A lot. I really ski. I don't ski all day anymore, though, but I skied 72 days.
72? Very good.
Impressive.
Well, I want to thank everyone
When do you work?
for coming, for hanging
I know,
out with
that's all I
us.
do.
And it's been a great night, and I hope everybody, enjoyed it. Thank you for coming to the Mod Museum, and have a good night.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure, sure.
Whatever you do, don't charge for parking.